Will do. Hello, and welcome to the Three Idiots Talk Aquariums podcast. Um, so, hope you guys have been enjoying our previous episodes. Today we've got a top five, something nice and fun, and it's going to be top five fish to avoid. Um, it can be. I think the interesting part about this one is I feel like we all have different sort of interpretations of the question, um, which will be fun. So yeah, I don't know if you want to start us off, Cam, but yeah.
Yep, can do. The first fish on my list is the bog standard common gold spot red spot pleco, and I base my opinion on that purely because people see them in a shop at this big, get told they're only going to get to this big, and they end up getting this big. That's where that best is, not because the fish itself is going to be full of disease, going to cause troubles, going to have any issues like that, other than it generally getting too big for most people's aquariums. It's just that they're just so commonly mis-ID'd as a standard bristle nose. And people have them for 18 months and have this big behemoth fish in their aquarium, and then they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
I'm just really interested. I'm really interested in how people are going to be able to see this big, and this big on a podcast, but that's all right.
Hey, we record
the I'll agree with you too, because I see so many of them in the wrong tanks. Also, they end up being one of those ones that ends up getting adopted out, given away, and just getting thrown around everywhere, going from like a 2-foot tank to a 3-foot tank to like a 4-foot tank, until hopefully someone can eventually house the thing when it gets to like 60 centimeters. Like it's just ethically, I think some of these fish shouldn't be brought in, but anyway, that's a different discussion.
They also get hired as like cleaning type fish, but they need their own special diet. They need to be fed their own stuff.
And all they do is make a shitload of mess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the main problem with them. And the other thing as well, I think for them as well is like people try to put them in like planted tanks, and just when they get that big, they just like it's a big fish moving around. It just digs stuff up by mistake, And then people get annoyed and like, oh, I hate this fish so much. It's ruining my nice aquascape. And it's like, yeah, well, it's not ruining it. It's just it happens to be a large fish trying to get past, and
it's just doing
plants aren't the most. Plants is not the same as a rock.
It's a bull in a China store, right? It's just cruising around, smashing everything.
Yeah,
exactly. No, I'd agree with that for sure.
I want to just premise it. I have nothing overly against that fish. I just think it should be avoided. And like I said, potentially not even brought in wrong.
They're definitely one that. Oh no, you go, Ryan.
So they're a fish that seems to be very cheap and very common.
Yeah.
But probably more aboard in than actually can be housed.
That's what I was just about to say. I think they're way too cheap for what they are. Like, probably, I don't know, maybe like if they were like $100 or whatever, people would kind of think about, oh yeah, it's actually going to get pretty big. There's like that value there. But when it's like, I don't know what, like a little one's like maybe $20 or something, I don't really know. But like, that's the kind of price where someone will just buy it and not even think about it too much, and then get stuck with this thing that's just going to ruin their tank, So yeah. Well, good. All right.
Okay,
well,
we agree on that one. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to go next. So the first one I had on my list was pea puffers. There's a few reasons. Number one is I think they're too small. Like they're too small. They're the kind of fish where it's like, I think it has to be like your third or fourth tank. Like if your only tank is pea puffers, I think you lose interest pretty easily, just because it's like, unless you're sitting right there, it's just going to look like an empty tank, and then that's kind of boring. And the other thing is like, especially if it's your first tank or like your only tank, it is very, very limiting in what else you can get. Because I know it's an area for debate, but I don't think it should be. They just will kill everything else. There's like, I would very much say that they're only suitable to be kept by themselves. And I don't, that's not that fun. It's just going to be a boring tank with like nothing really in it. What are you going to do, So yeah, that would be my one. What do you guys reckon?
I've never kept them, so I have no idea. But I have heard people call them murder beans before, so I think that probably is quite appropriate.
Yeah, I'd say it's a very fitting name.
And they do look. I mean, they've got a bit of personality. They've got a bit of character, but for a beginner who's probably trying to cram as much as they can, that's going to get along in a tank to have colour and activity, it's probably not a good choice. They're purely freshwater too, aren't they? Those ones. They're not the brackish ones either, are they?
No, they're freshwater. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Oh, depending on which way I'm interpreting the question, I'm not entirely sure. From a beginner point of view, 100%. Add that they basically only eat live food as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Can be a lot of effort for a beginner. So on that side, for sure. But as a general fish to avoid, I don't think I can agree with that. Most people, I feel, if they're buying a pea puffer, they do a little bit of research beforehand. It's not an impulse kind of buy because they're not bright and colourful and active, so they're kind of destination to buy it, if that makes sense. And because of which they've done some research, they're understanding the limitations and the positives and negatives to them.
I think there's a big difference though between like reading about it online and like actually keeping them. Because cool. When I first kept pea puffers, it was the same, and I kind of like understood like, oh yeah, they'll be by themselves and whatever. But then like just keeping them, I think it gets very boring very fast. You just like they're just too small. You just can't see them. Especially like in the situation where it's like you want something like to as like an aesthetic thing to like look nice in your house. I don't know if they're going to be the best candidate for that, just because unless your face is like right up against the glass, you won't even be able to see them. So yeah.
Does that come down to how you set your tank up for them though?
I don't think so, because like even if you had like a real nice, I suppose this is more personal preference than anything, but even if you had like a super flash planted tank with like just a bunch of pea puffers, I'm personally still going to find that super boring and lose interest very fast.
It's interesting though, because we're talking about fish you should avoid, and like I feel like a lot of people love their pea puffers and have a lot of success with them. And I feel like we're all kind of slipping back into the top 5 beginner fish type thing. Like we've said top 5 fish to avoid, but we haven't said for the beginner, for a small tank, for a red spot pleco would be fine if you had a 20-foot tank in your lounge, but most people don't. So they're causing problems across the hobby. But pea puffers, I don't know. I said a lot of people enjoy them. Would probably be like lynch mobbing outside your store in the morning. Like you got to be careful.
Probably. I think a lot of people do enjoy them, but also I think a lot of people do get bored or sort of lose that interest or like excitement of like adding stuff to your tank every now and then and that.
Do they kill everything? Are they aggressive? Yeah,
they like kill anything.
Have you seen many people try and rehome pea puffers after they've had them for 6 months or 8 months? They're not a fish that I generally see being rehomed.
I do, and the other thing that I think is more common is like because they're kind of like a pet fish, people don't want to rehome them. But quite often, I get people coming in. They're like, "Oh, what can I add with my pea puffers?" I want a bit more activity. And then it's like, I've read on some random internet thing that like, oh yeah, they'll be fine with like, I don't know, Danios or something. I'm like, yeah, I still wouldn't. and that's
Yeah.
it's one of those ones where it's like I think people get stuck with them. I'm not sure they're a rehoming candidate, but they're like a get stuck with them thing for however long it takes them to kind of drop off naturally.
But the same can be said about people who take on a cat they eventually don't want. They continue to keep it forever. Like as a commitment of being a pet owner, you keep these things and you look after
Yeah,
them.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying like in terms of like the enjoyment factor, I think there's other ways to, or like other fish that might be more kind of interesting or exciting, and you'll get more out of keeping rather than a pea puffer. So yeah.
Okay, I can see that, but I don't know if I entirely agree. I don't think when I think of fish to avoid, I think of fish that I call a shitfish, and I wouldn't say that pea puffers are a shitfish, but I've never kept them before. I wouldn't keep them before. I found them quite popular. Like I've seen them be quite popular. I don't know. I don't think that's something that's going to really. The only thing they could really set someone up on, I guess, is the aggression. You know.
Yeah. All right. Well,
and
what's your suggestion then?
My suggestion. How did we go on? What was it? I was going to say baby discus.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
stupid.
That's sort of anything below sort of 5 to 7 centimeters probably. When I was starting out, there was a person that used to breed discus and sell them at 1 centimeter, $1 reserve, the whole batch on Trade Me, and they used to make a killing doing it. And I went out and spent $200 or $300 on like 40 discus, thinking, oh, I can grow these up and sell them for $100 each, you know, like, and just killed them all. Those died, you know.
Yeah.
And the person was like, oh, I'll help you and I'll give full support on how to raise them and all this sort of stuff. And then, one by one, they all just dropped dead. I was doing all these water changes and had this pristine tank and all this stuff. And, like, you know, it was just stupid, you know. And you go into the pet shops and you see all these discus with eyes the whole size of their body and pinched in foreheads and just real manky looking things for like $180 or something. And you're like, some poor bugger's going to buy that. If they're lucky, they're going to barely keep it alive, but it's not going to have a happy life or a happy fish keeper, you know.
For the to expand for the people listening, what does the like big eyes and pinched forehead mean for if you're buying a fish? Like, what would that mean for the average hobbyist who maybe doesn't perhaps know what all that kind of stuff means?
Oh, it's just that the fish has been stunted, basically. So it hasn't been kept in the optimum environment, and it's essentially its body stopped growing, but its eye has kept growing, and that's pretty much all you're ever going to get out of it is this tiny little thing that's never going to live up to the photos you see online or be, you know, be spectacular. Now, the run to the litter, there is, you can have some success with it. I mean, I'm not a discus expert, but I've been around them a little bit. You can have some success by buying bigger ones, you know. Like if you buy a bigger one, it's usually done all its growing and it's gone through all the susceptible stages, and they still need a really established tank and a bit, you know, water changes and good quality water and stuff. But you have a lot more success with them. Of course, they cost more, so a lot of people go for the cheap one and think I'll grow it out and then I'll have this, you know, $200 fish, but it doesn't usually work out that way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would. When I've even like the ones that you buy from like the kind of general fish importers, they're pretty much always, as Ryan described, like super skinny, stunted, with some like, often get them with like some weird like crooked spines and stuff like that.
Gill plates all stuffed as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like from that point, there's not a lot you can do, and they're so susceptible to like any little thing, just, you know, lying down and dying, unfortunately. There is like a few places where, like you said, where you can get the bigger ones, which is going to be more sort of likely to have success. be it, like the imported ones that Ronnie from New Cookie imported semi-recently, that were probably, I don't know, what would they have been, maybe 12, 15 centimeters, most of them, and some really cool colors and everything.
So beautiful looking fish, yeah, I agree.
Yep. And there's some other like breeders and stuff around that have similar sort of stuff going on. Sorry, I just got to let the cat out. But yeah, I'd agree. They're not probably the best. They're not a fish that you'd be set up for success in buying, I would say, which is, I suppose, the most important thing, especially if you're sort of newer or more on that beginner level and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Small discus are to be avoided. I pretty much tell anyone that comes in looking for discus that exact same thing. Save some money, put some money into a bigger fish. You're going to be far more successful than buying a whole bunch of small ones, and you'll have a whole bunch that weed out. And you might be left with one or two sort of things. So again, it's the cash first opportunity, or whatever way you want to put it, that makes it a difficult sell sometimes. But you're getting the better fish when you're basically buying a bigger one with discus for the best part.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's that kind of that thing that it's not just discus, it applies to everything. It's like you can buy a fish as cheap as you want, but if it dies after 2 weeks every time, it's not really cheaper, because obviously you either got to replace it or you just lose that money, which is no one wants to do, and no one wants to see. So yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
What's your next one, Cam?
Cool. I'm going to give you a little bit of everything, so I'm going to run away and grab my other chair because this one's hard as fuck. Give me
Fair
1
enough.
second. Yeah.
All right. Well, I suppose I'll go first, and we can swap turns. My next option I was going to say was going to be clown loaches. So
Oh yeah, they were on my list too.
I think the problem with clown loaches is because like obviously they no matter what you do, they're going to be expensive fish. So what I see people doing all the time is they buy like maybe 2 or 3 in their, I don't know, say like 150-liter tank, and then that's it. Which is, I think, we'd all agree that clown loaches especially do better in a big group. Like even if you have like just 6, they're probably not going to be that active or anything. They'll kind of just sit around. And like the more you have, the more of that schooling behavior you get, which obviously would mean they're more like the happier fish. And then also the other thing, they do get very big. They take a long time to get big, but they do get big. Too big for like that 150-liter tank that they usually go to. And then I think the other thing is like they're very expensive. That'd be like one of them that'd be up there. I don't know, maybe like for a small one, maybe like $35 or something like that. I think for that money, you can buy a way better, like more suitable fish for that setup that will give you a lot more of that like enjoyment and like activity and, eat your snails, everything like that, which is what people buy clown roaches for. Like, I don't know, something like even one of the most popular ones, like the dwarf chain lodge, because they got that quite cool pattern and they stay little, and I don't know what they'd be like, maybe $20, $25 each, which is different to $30, $35. So yeah, I think that would be my recommendation, or I don't know what the opposite of a recommendation is, but that would be my suggestion. So yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a valid one. I mean, they can be kept successfully if you've got a big tank. It's just like a lot of things, but generally they're probably one of those ones that, like you say, people buy 1 or 2 of them. There is another one like discus where you can get suckered into buying the small ones, and you see ones that are just so skinny. You think, oh my gosh, how did that survive? quarantine, and how is that going to survive moving to someone else's tank? You know,
Yeah,
is it
exactly.
even eating? You know, and that's because people buy the cheaper, smaller ones and think, oh, I'll grow it out. You know, the size I don't think is such a like immediate issue, like because they grow so slowly. But most people probably can't house a group of 6, you know, and they're cool when you get them in a group of 6 to 10 because you actually see them out and about schooling, and you can tell people that have got one because they've got a clown loach in there and it's just hiding under a rock somewhere, you know, it's hiding under a driftwood or you can never see it. So it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
that's having a pretty crappy life, you know.
I probably don't want to say this, but I would say they're probably one for more the advanced hobbyist, in that advanced in the sense of like the investment side of things. Like you'll see, you know, sometimes you see people who've got like 20 or 30 of them, like good size ones in their tank, and they're like real active, fat and happy and all this. But the problem is with that, that's a lot of money. I'm not good at maths, but you know, talking like thousands of dollars worth of fish. And it's just like, that's probably not going to be an option for someone who's been keeping fish for like 3 years and just wants something like colorful on the bottom level of the tank. Like I said, like a chain loach or even like various cories or whatever, I think would be much more suitable for what people want to, kind of why people buy the clown loaches. That color, that like activity in their minds, all that kind of thing. I think there's plenty more, probably more suitable options.
Yeah.
I agree with clown loaches. I think
I just noticed you have a clown loach on your t-shirt.
certainly do. I think the classic buying them to kill snails, buy 1 or 2 into a 60-litre or a 90-litre tank. You know, we're talking about fish that can get upwards of a foot long and high and chunky. And also they're very, very, very social animals, and you know, keeping 1 or 2, that's not ideal for them. Also, when they're small, they just have a lot of problems with them. A lot of internal parasites. They're prone to ick when they're small as well. And also as they get bigger, they're quite prone to internal parasites. The amount of times you see people who've got clown loaches that's wasting away, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, as a whole, I think they should be avoided. They're another one of those things where maybe a bit of education would keep them where they need to be sitting. Like people need to know they get big, they need to be social, they need high flow, they need really warm water, and then the fish itself doesn't get neglected because I think they're a candidate for neglect more than anything. I don't think I agree that they should be avoided for the price, or you don't get your money's worth out of them because $30 to $40 a fish, you get a dozen or so in there. Cool, you've laid down $400 or $500 or whatever, but you're getting a lot of fish for that time and a lot of lifespan for that time if they're looked after. But I do think they're probably up there with the candidates of one of the more neglected fish that we have, uneducated fish, and they should be. We should do a lot better with them, and probably should be avoided for in a lot of cases.
I suppose that was when I was saying about the price. I was saying, to clarify, I was probably more meaning it's more like for the amount of money you spend, you're not gonna get what you were looking to get out of them in that situation. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a really colorful looking fish if it hides all the time and you never see it. I'm looking at you, fancy pleco keepers. But I mean, it's like, if you buy, I don't know, 3 clown loaches, I think that money could be better spent on like, I don't know, 10, even like albino cories or something, and you will actually get what you're trying to get in terms of like the color, or I suppose lack of color in that example, and like the activity level and everything like that.
Yeah.
I do actually really like them personally as a fish, but I just think they're not suitable for what people like the purposes that a lot of people buy them for, or like the situation. Especially given how much you spend on a fish that's not gonna live its best life and be all that happy and everything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also don't think that I wouldn't classify them as a shit fish. They're actually quite a cool fish, but
Agreed.
they just need some research and
Yeah.
some infrastructure around them. Again, the price I don't think is crazy, but I spend a little bit of time in the world where fish are quite expensive for me. So, that's all relative. But for a beginner, they're probably more expensive than a platy or a guppy or something like that. So yeah, I think an interesting one where we've gone back to the fish that beginners should avoid and people with small tanks should avoid. And a common theme of doing some research first.
Yeah, and neglected.
Yeah.
I
the
think
ones we see cause the biggest
doing
issue across the hobby.
The doing your research thing is kind of, I think, across the board. It's more in terms of like getting the most out of your tank, like enjoyment wise, or like in terms of fish happiness wise, all this kind of thing. I think that's a fish that's in its like perfect environment. It's going to look way cooler than a fish that's just barely hanging on to life, no matter what fish it is, really. But yeah.
And I get this a lot with people who come to buy fish off me. They send me a message, "Oh, I want to buy some fish. What have you got?" I said, "Well, what are you into?" "I don't know. I just want some cool fish." I'm like, "Well, like,
we're gonna need more to go off there, Chief.
How big's your tank? What if you currently got? Oh, it's empty." And I was like, "Okay, well, go on Google, go somewhere and find some images of some tanks that you like, or something, and then we'll kind of figure out what to add based on that, because otherwise they just end up going pretty fish, blue fish, red fish, green fish, chuck them all in a tank, and then it's not
5 minutes later they're all dead.
Yeah, or just everyone's having a horrible existence, and then they're posting on Facebook, "What's wrong with my fish?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my fish is sick. Oh, this one's got no fins and it can't swim properly."
A fish is a fish.
Yeah,
Phil,
exactly.
what fish are, and then fishes aren't just fish.
Yeah, and it's just ethically we've got to try and do our best to. Yeah, I guess the key thing for me is to make sure people have fish and have success with them, but also predominantly it's underlying thing of, we choose to have these little creatures and put them in glass boxes for our enjoyment. So we should probably try and do the best that we can with them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, do you have another suggestion, Ryan, or you're just gonna wing it?
No, I was gonna say like the arowanas, particularly the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
We see them. I don't see them personally because I don't really walk that world, but I've heard from you, especially Cam, that there's other stores that sell them for 2-foot tanks. And I, sometimes I've sold fish to people who've got like a 3 or 3.5 foot tank and gone, "Yeah, this tank's a little bit small for them. You will need to upgrade."
Yeah.
So and knowing that the fish will be okay in there for a year or two, but I think with an arowana you can't really sell it into a 2-foot tank and say, "Oh, you're going to have to upgrade at some stage," because it's not just upgrading to a 4 or 5 foot tank you can pick up off TradeMe or Facebook. It's upgrading to something that's pretty serious for that fish to have a good life.
Exactly.
Like it's not just a.
Yeah, I think the other problem with the particularly silver arowanas is I know a not insignificant number of people that kind of get them as like an introduction to the hobby, because basically what happens, there's names, but these people see them on on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, all this kind of thing. And they're like, I mean, everyone can agree, like a big arowana is like, that's a super cool fish. If people had the capacity, I'm sure everyone would have one. And this is a very common thing. They get that Aqua One, the big Aqua One tank that's like, I think it's like 1800 by, or like 1.8 meters long by like, it's like 50 centimeters wide and like 65 centimeters tall or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, because obviously it's like, oh yeah, that's the biggest tank you can buy off the shelf in most places. Like I'm sure there's some places you can buy bigger, but like for the most part, that's the most common big tank.
Common
like,
retail tank. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh yeah, that's the biggest tank. That must be fine. Especially if these people are like, this shop is selling the arowanas. This must be, this is the best we can do. And I mean, I've had this discussion with many people, but that size tank is far too small, particularly for a silver, because the silvers get stupid big, and it's just not like, maybe you'll get, I don't know, from the size you buy most of them at, maybe you'll get 2 or 3 years at the most out of them, and then you'll get stuck with this fish. And because the other problem, like, so we're talking about clown loaches before. If you get a big clown loach, you can sell it very easily. Everyone wants a big clown loach. You get a big arowana, you're never going to sell that thing, because it goes back to that thing of like, everyone who has the capacity to keep those fish already has them, or they have the more kind of sought after Asian arowanas or whatever. So you're just going to be stuck with this fish that's stupid big. No one's going to buy it. You don't have the resources to get a 2.5 meter long tank. So, that's when they get kind of stuck in these tanks that are quite sad in terms of like the size of the fish compared to the size of the tank. Like, I mean, so like a silver arowana would get, in my opinion, a well cared for one would get like 4 foot, pretty close to 4 foot, like over a meter long. So like if your tank's only 1.8 meters long, that's like
It's
half as long as the tank is comically small,
It's often the width that gets them too, right?
Yeah,
100%.
It's the length. Often we do all right with length, like a 1.8 by 1.2 meter tank or 1.8 meter square tank would probably be all right. You probably still want to go 8 foot for a bit of swimming length, so I think it actually have something to do with its life.
At least it's a defensible size. Like you can see the argument. Like maybe it's a bit small, maybe not, but
it can
it's
turn
close
around
enough
in it.
where it's
It can turn
viable.
around in it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I had arrows, particularly silvers, in my list as well. They're the kind of price that can be sort of impulse bought for a small fish that's going to get ginormous. And again, I'm showing hand sizes, and people can't see the hand sizes. So there's that one.
For the people listening, you'd probably buy them like, say, 25 to 30 centimeters.
Yeah.
Oh.
Size of a cell phone, they're not big.
Small enough where it's like, it would physically,
It's
like,
cute.
you could put it in a 2 foot tank and nothing bad's going to happen for a month.
And they often are in 2 foot tanks in the shops.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also think because they're not housed appropriately, again, length is normally okay. It's the width. They get all sorts of issues, gill curl, droppy eye, or whatever it's called. Just lack of care type issues. But the big thing for me is I think people get them and go, cool, I've got this massive predator fish. I can feed all these fish to it and get their own kind of crazy, torture-y kind of enjoyment out of feeding live food and stuff like that, when the reality is if you do it properly, you don't have to feed them live food.
Exactly.
Particularly the silvers. And I think a lot of people buy big apex predators like that so they can basically get off on watching other animals get ripped to pieces and stuff like that, which doesn't sit okay with me either.
100%. And I mean, even within that, I think it's like, that's one I get pretty fired up about. It's like, they don't even eat fish really. They eat insects. Like
Yeah,
if you want to
yeah,
feed them like a live mealworm or whatever, that would be good for them. But you're not gonna, sit there like cackling away watching a fish eat a worm. It's not that kind
yeah,
of serial killer type vibe. So yeah.
yeah. I'm a huge componentary fan, or what are the words I'm trying to say about that isn't really okay. And just to premise it a little bit, I'm okay with live feedings for fish that need to be fed live fish or live rodents or whatever it is that they need to be fed. But for the best part, most fish that we keep in New Zealand don't need that kind of diet, and we just do it for our own entertainment as opposed to what's right for the animals we're keeping.
100%. And it's one of those ones where it's like, just because a fish can eat a live fish doesn't mean it should. Like
Yeah.
an Oscar could eat, I don't know, what's it, like a guppy or whatever, but they're supposed to be eating, again, they eat like insects and stuff. Like, I don't know, live feed them earthworms all day if you want. That's not really the same thing. It's more like kind of a human can eat McDonald's all day every day if they want, but that's
Can
not
I?
going to be the healthiest option. Well, I mean, you'll for a year or two, and then we'll find you on the side of the road. But if you want to do that, that's fine. But I think the thing is, fish don't get a choice. They get whatever humans choose to give them. So I think there's that extra responsibility of you want to give them decent food. Like I probably am in a bit of a different camp. Like it doesn't have to be 100% perfect because you can feed them the world's best food all day, but if your water conditions suck, it's still not going to be happy. So
Yeah, it is a balancing
that
act. And I
whole
think we've got to go through our food. We've got a whole series. We've got a whole podcast on food. I think. 'Cause
that was
that's an
I'll let you
interesting.
guys in on a secret. That's the one I have planned for next week if you're down. So
Right,
you
yeah.
know,
No time.
And that'll be an interesting one because it's something that I believe that no one actually really fully knows what the right answer is.
I'd
And
agree with that.
I think it's still evolving, and I think it's very opinionated, and I've changed about 10 times on what I've fed over the last 25 years based on random shit I've read around the internet, and so
Yeah,
Sure.
for
it's an
sure.
interesting one.
All right, Cam, what's your next option?
I'm going to go with kribs, but I'm going to premise it in pairs of kribs. An individual kribensis by itself is great. They're awesome. There's nothing wrong with them. They're bright, they're colourful, they've got personality, and they suit a lot of tank environments. As soon as you get a pair, game over. That's that's a huge pendulum swing there when you get a pair of kribs. They breed ridiculously well, and it's almost impossible to get rid of the fry or the juvies. I don't know how many people come into the shop and say, I've got some kribs, do you want them? And I say, sure, if you pay me for them, I'll take them. And they kind of look at me like, what? So I'm not going to be able to sell them, so you need to kind of give me some money, and then I'll take away your problem pretty much.
So I probably should post about this more, but I have in the shop, I have a tank that is genuinely, it would have probably 75 plus kribs in there. And like I've already sold, like I would have easily sold in the past like couple months, I would have sold like 30 or 40 of them. And for every one I sell, someone probably comes and trades in 5 or like gives me 5. And like, I mean, for me, I'm always going to take them because like I have more capacity, obviously, with a shop than Fred with his one tank. But I mean, like, what I give them away all the time, and it doesn't even make a dent. And because I think with something like a guppy or whatever, even if they're breeding insane, you can like everyone always wants guppies. Like even if it's just like your little kid that lives next door with his little 20-liter tank wants a single guppy, to put
Guppies
with
you can live
their
on. Yeah.
what other stuff, that's fine. But it's like crabs get a bit bigger, a bit more aggressive. Not really the most. They are colourful, but they're not
The females are
colourful
super colourful.
enough to make the difference in those. Like, they're not colourful enough where every single person wants one. But I'm sure pretty much every fish hobbyist has kept a guppy before, even if it's by mistake, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
They actually,
They're
going back
good.
to what we were talking about before, if you are wanting to do feeder fish for a specific fish, they're probably going to be a good choice in that you'll never run out of them, and they grow fast and everything like that. But aside from that, they just overpopulate the world in 5 seconds, and then
It's actually
you're
a
stuck
shame.
with
It's
them.
actually a shame because they're a cool fish. Like the
Yeah.
females, especially, get real awesome. I actually, for a while, had a couple of different species of wild caught cribs, and they were really cool. They were real awesome, different colors and stuff. But then they got lumped. They got lumped in the same category as cribs, and I couldn't get rid of them. And they breed just as fast. I had tanks of them that I'd spent thousands on, you know. And they were a cool fish too. But yeah, the problem is, as soon as someone gets one, they go, oh, these are $20 each in the pet shop. I'll breed them, and then I've got 100, so I've got $2,000 worth of fish here. No, you've got 100 problems right there, buddy.
They're good entry level if you want to learn to spawn egg laying fish or cave dwelling fish, and if they're a good entry fish if you want to kind of learn what dwarf cichlids are like. But that's kind of where it ends. But again, as an individual fish in one tank, there's nothing wrong with them. I think they're absolutely fine. But it's when you get them as a pair that's when the whole system of those fish just change altogether.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
All right. Well, I think it's my turn now. So I have one. I don't know what you guys will think of it, but I was going to say frontosis because oh my god, I'm going to say because it goes back to that thing of what we're saying in for what most of the frontoses get sold to, like tank wise, they always look so sad and kind of just sit around getting beaten up by people put them in their like African Cichlid tank, which is like got one of every single African in the world, and then it's just getting smashed by everything, and then it's not looking happy, and you spend all this money on this fish that just is gonna make you depressed every time you look at it. Like when you put them with those kind of fish, they get beaten up, or nipped out a lot. Like they have the trailers on their fins that get kind of munched off, and they get these real nubby little like stubby looking fins, and they're not able that easily to compete for food with, I don't know, say what's an example, like your mixed and boon or whatever. They'll get out competed very easily.
Malawi's definitely,
yeah, they get out competed. They just look sad. They are super like kind of just sit there and don't really do anything. So yeah, that's kind of why I would say they're one of the ones where it's you really need you need a frontosa tank. You don't want to put them in a African tank, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to do them, they're one that kind of needs to be done on purpose rather than like as an afterthought. Otherwise, you're not going to get much out of them. They'll just be sad and make you sad every time you look at your tank, basically. But they are a very cool fish, and I love them, and I know all three of us love them, but in the right setup only, I'd say. Yeah.
And most people have them in tanks that are too small. You know, like a fish that gets to 30, 40 centimeters, you know, and they startle really easily. Like you go past the tank and they shoot off. They need some space so they don't just smash into the rocks on the side of the tank and kill themselves, you know. Like, and I've seen like 4 or 5 species, different species of wild caught frontoses, and they are big, majestic things, and then you see them in a mixed tank, which is too small. Like Cam was saying, all their fins chewed off, they're dark as they're sitting down the back of the tank going, I don't even know what is going on right now. This is just like, I've been thrown in this classroom with a bunch of ADD kids, and they're all running around me, throwing stuff at me, and I'm just like,
I just want to read it.
I'm really stressed
Yeah,
that
for
I'm
sure.
hating my life right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I think the word majestic works really, really well for them. It's a
For
beautiful
sure.
word for frontosa. I don't want to agree, but I'm agreeing with you, Cam.
I'm not saying that you can't keep them and enjoy them. I'm just saying probably they're one where, for the reasons people buy them,
I know.
it's
I
not.
agree.
It's probably
Gonna end
they're probably like everything else that we've talked about. Also, a lot of the stuff we talked about, where there's just too many of them around as well. You can go on Trade Me, you can
100%.
buy them for $20 each or something, and you can go on Google and see this picture of this real, I guess majestic is the best word, frontosa, and think, oh, I can buy that. And you go out and you buy them for $20. You stick them in your African tank, which probably has, or your cichlid tank even, which probably has a lot of Americans and other stuff in there that shouldn't have anyway. But anyway, it's a different story. And then it just has a crap life, and you never actually achieve the aim of that majestic fish you saw online. So you're kind of just wasting your time. So they're probably
100%.
everywhere. They're probably too cheap.
Yeah, I think there's an underlying theme of a lot of the fish we've talked about is the overall neglect long term. The fish themselves, for the best part, we've talked about it. There's nothing kind of wrong with the fish, give or take, but it's the long term care of them that keeps them a little bit neglected, keeps them not healthy, not content, not showing what they should be showing for the money that you're paying and for the fish that they are.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, they're just, you want, like I said before, even if you don't care about the fish at all, which you should, but like even if you don't care, you just think of them as a plant, they're not gonna, even in that respect, they're not gonna be that cool if they're super sad on death's door. Like, you're not gonna enjoy them. And then obviously you should care about fish because they are alive. But
So
you know,
wind
it's
up a few plant people
kind of,
saying not care about them like a plant.
well, like a plant, like, well, if you look at my plants, they're all
You're digging a
not
hole,
the
you're
happiest.
digging a
But
hole.
who cares?
We're not on Pandora now, Cam Nelson. We're not on Pandora, mate. We're all right. We're all right. Plants aren't alive.
I don't care about plants. I'm gonna put it out there. They're cool to look at sometimes, but like if they're half dead, it's not the end of the world for me. So like, you know, it sucks, but no one's in pain or whatever. But that is not the same for an actual, like, a live fish or something that's supposed to be happy. So yeah.
Yeah, we can agree on that distinction. Motion passed, done.
All right. Do you have any more options, Ryan? Or are you just gonna?
I do. The angelfish.
Oh, interesting. Why do you say that?
I hate angelfish. I think that they I think their name's stupid because they're not angels.
Yes.
They probably should be a-hole fish, but not angels.
I've got a theory on that. I think when they were first named, someone misspelled angle, and they meant an anglefish, not an angelfish, because they're sure as shit not angels.
Yeah, I just think, again, for the reason they are awesome fish, and you know, I'd love to get some ultims one day. But most people put them that they think tropical fish. They think a neon and an angelfish is pretty much the two fish that everyone knows and everyone thinks about. They end up going in tanks that are too small. They buy 3 of them and 2 pair off and just destroy the other one and every other fish in the tank. They end up getting kept with fish that are too small and they just eat them all. You know, like they're cichlids, they're predatory, you know, in a nice, good sized tank. And you don't need a huge tank for angels, you know, like 3 foot, good size 3 foot's probably all right. And with the right sort of stocking in that, with some bigger, more robust tetras and stuff like that, they're fine. But I think a lot of people, and a lot of my friends have done it too, against my advice. They've got a little 2 foot tank, they stick angels in it, they end up with one angel who's eaten everything else and killed everything else, and they've just got an angelfish in a species only tank, you know. And it's just like, I think it sets people up. Again, they're common, they're cheap, everyone wants them, but I don't know if many people actually know what they're getting themselves into.
100%. I definitely agree with that. And because for me as well, the other problem is actually finding a nice looking angel is a mission in of itself. Pretty much everyone you'll see has something wrong with it, whether it be like bent fins or like short gills or like just missing / crooked ventral fins or something like that. And it's not, that just sucks. Like, it's not an angel fish at that point. It's kind of a different thing. Because like for me, so like we put angels in our service tanks often, not all the time, but some of them do. And I mean, they're cool in the right environment. They get nice and big. You can get the very colorful ones, all that kind of thing. But they're not going to be one where it's, I'd say, easy to keep in what you've said. Like, they do just kill stuff, and like they do pick at plants sometimes as well and stuff like that. It's like they're kind of one that you have to actively keep almost, if that makes sense, rather than like you just stick it in like stick a guppy in a tank and it's like, oh yeah, you just look after the tank. But with an angel, you put it in, you kind of have to look after the angel, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'd agree. I'm not a big fan of angels either, to be honest. I understand the appeal, but not one for me, I wouldn't say.
And it's again like everything else we've talked about is the right environment, and it's knowing what you're getting yourselves into. I mean, a lot of people would go, I mean, it'd be cool if we could sex them out like African Cichlids and do all males, it'd be cool to do an all male angelfish tank, but they're really hard to sex, and two females will pair off and think they're breeding as well, and so it's like, I think you're just up against it if you don't know what you're doing and you're getting angelfish. I think you're in trouble.
I'd agree.
They're a bit of a plague, bit of a pest. I did a 7-foot angel tank once with about 18 of them in there, and it was just phenomenal to watch them hunt together, work together, just be a full-on shoal from one end to another, going through wood roots and stuff like that. But they're not normally kept like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, when they're kept in these amazing optimum conditions, they are a stunning fish and a great fish. But they're often kept in too smaller tanks with the wrong fish that go with them. And yeah, it's just not. I have to agree that they're probably avoidable, despite the fact that a lot of them.
I think in my opinion, they're probably one of the most prime candidates for one that I think we have to do better on as an industry. Just because, so there's a story of maybe a month ago where someone came in with a 2-foot tank and was wanting to buy I think 4 or 5 angels.
Yeah.
And I just said, I was like, even for one, the tank's not big enough. Like, you'll be fine for a few months, but then you'll just be having non-stop problems. And then I pointed at, I can't remember what it was. It was probably I don't know, honey gouramis or something. And I was like, you get the same kind of color and everything, but they stay small enough, not going to kill everything, all that. And it's like, oh yeah, whatever. And then I know for a fact they went to another shop who sold them angels. And then after that, they came back and they're like, why are these angels trying to kill everything? I was like, well, because you did what, not to be a dick, but it's because you did what I told you not to do. And
have you heard of a cichlid before? That's what angels are. They're cichlids. They're territorial. They're pair forming. That's what they do.
Exactly.
And I like angels too. I think that the idea of your big tank will be real wicked with them, and I'd love to get some ultims one day. I like those black ones, blue ones. They're real cool. They're all cool, but I just think they cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's too many floating around for what they act like, basically.
And the misconception is, again, if you ask most people, even if they're not fish people, they'll talk about probably Siamese spiders, those fighting fish, or the angelfish, or neons is pretty much, sometimes a guppy maybe, but they're the other ones that people think of when they think of tropical fish. So naturally when they get into it, they want to keep these things, because that's what you keep when you have tropical fish. Everyone knows it. Stick a goldfish in a bowl type thing. Again,
for
just
sure.
Just because everyone knows it doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, how are we to say what's wrong or right either? We can only really talk on what we've seen in our feelings and our experiences, based on logic.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. All good. Well, I think it's my turn next. So the one actually on topic, the ones I was going to say is I'm going to lump neons and cardinals both into the same category and say don't buy either of them. And it's one I've changed my mind on semi-recently, just because they die a lot and very easily. With the neons, they just don't last. I don't know, a few years at the most, if you're lucky, but very rarely. And then cardinals, I have personally found with cardinals, I don't know about you, Cam, but especially recently, they're just always sick. They just never come in happy. And then even after that, if once you get your ones that are happy, it doesn't take much for them to keel over, I've found. So yeah, those will be my suggestions.
I had neons on my list. I didn't have cardinals on it. Again, I think they're looked at as a cheap, entry-level, easy fish, but it's further from the truth because I think they're quite soft and they spook off and kill really easily. I've got a theory that neons die really easy because we're actually not keeping them the way they need to be kept. Obviously, they're often ridden with neon tetra disease, and they have a lot of fungal issues and that kind of stuff. But I think if they're not stressed, they're kept on a diet of good quality live food, soft tannin-rich water, they actually seem to thrive. Not everyone's going to do that. Majority of people aren't going to do that, so that's why they probably fall into the probably worth avoiding category. But I think a little bit of the issues with neons is they're not kept in the right way. They're only kept in a group of 3 or 4, not a group of 300. And I think that's what builds that continued reputation that neons are not that flash of fish. I would also argue the same a little with cardinals. If they're kept in good-sized groups with good water, decent live food, and in a decent setting and environment, actually towards what they need, they seem relatively hardy and a lot better fish. But they don't like.
I'd
they
agree
don't
with
like
that. I would say with the Cardinals side of things, if you are going to do it, I would do Cardinals, but there is probably, I think, better choices.
green neons.
I don't know. Yeah, green neons or even like something like a glow light, like a little bit different, but I think still plenty colorful, pretty much bulletproof, all this kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's better options for the reasons that people do keep them. So yeah.
I think also if you look online and you kind of just browse through the groups, the fish that people are having the most problems with are those, Why
Yeah.
is my neon doing this? Why has it got the splodge on it? Is this white spot? What is this? What is this? What is this? And if I go into a store, pretty much any store that's selling them, you can look in a tank and you can see some of them are stuffed. You can always see it in the neons. Cardinals I haven't had a lot of experience with. Traditionally, they used to be a lot better, a lot stronger and a lot hardier, but it sounds like they may be going the same way as neons from what you guys can say about the sort of the industry and how you guys are getting them in and having heavy losses. So it'd be a shame to lose them.
I mean, it's one where it's like, so I will be messaging you later, Cam, about them, but maybe I'm not keeping Cardinals right in the shop, but it's one of those ones where it's like, then a lot of people would have similar conditions to having them in the shop with like maybe a little bit harder, no tannins, all this kind of thing. So it might be worth maybe keeping them in. They might be one of those ones that falls into more of a like specific setup kind of category rather than like a every tank sort of situation. But yeah, I mean it's.
I think hobbyists or general public want to believe that every single fish that we can buy from the shop is going to be compatible with every single fish that we've already got at home and with the type of water that we are keeping. And the reality is, in lots of cases, most people don't. keep the water where it needs to be for the specific fish that they're buying. They go, this is pretty, it doesn't get too big, I can put it into my XX tank, as opposed to, this is pretty, these are the care requirements I need to give it. I'm not willing to do that to get this fish to thrive.
And we see a lot of that where people, so they'll post something up, oh, can I keep this with this? And the experienced people, the people that have been around a while, will say, no, never, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. But the people that have done it for a month or two, or the people that like to think they're rebels and never follow the rules and all this sort of stuff. No, it's fine. I've done it before. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. And then often the fish are immature, or they're, or whatever reason. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they're posting, oh, what's wrong with my fish? Why has this happened? Why? And they don't make the connection, And it's the same with you guys with your neons and stuff. If you're keeping them in I've never done it, but if you're finding they're staying alive in the right environment, and then you refuse to sell them to someone, they're probably just going to go to the next store and buy them. So it does become an ethical sort of, or a hard business decision for you guys to be like that. Like, do I make a sale to a home that I know isn't appropriate, knowing that they're going to buy it anyway, and pay my mortgage and feed my kids, or do I stick to my guns? So I think, again, as an industry, we probably need to do better, and that's probably a discussion for another podcast. But I find that very interesting and very, very hard in business. I've been in business myself. When do you give the customer what they want, knowing they're going to go somewhere else, but also knowing it's the wrong solution for them? Or
exactly,
animals, it's the wrong thing for the live animals. So.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I would definitely be keen to talk about that kind of more, sort of in depth, because I know, for example, we all have different perspectives on it. So after we get off, I'm going to write this in the list of topic ideas, and we'll see when it gets pulled out of the hat, eh?
Cool. Yeah.
Sweet. I'm not going to lie. I've entirely lost count of how many ideas we've all given. So
I've got 4 crossed off my list combined,
right.
but I think we might be a little bit more than that.
What's your 5th option?
I'm going to go with Aratus. They are dicks, just straight up dicks.
Yeah.
They're a cool fish that they have 2 different colors for the one fish. I think that's really rad, but that's about where the coolness ends for them. And I think I just want to add on to that a little bit that I don't think big box stores should be carrying African cichlids as a general whole. And I think that because the amount of people that have come in and bought 2 for $10 special deals and put them in with their neons, and they've got no neons, or this is really pretty, it's really cool, and then they've put an Aratus in with their community tank and it's just destroyed everything. Either the knowledge isn't there, the questions aren't being asked, or Africans are just, in general, dicks. But Aratus are definitely the ones that top the list for me of African cichlids and just troublemakers.
I'd agree with that. It is a shame because, like you said, they're really cool. For those of you who don't know, it's you get the 2 fish. It's the males will be kind of black and blue, and then the females is yellowy, goldish kind of color. I really like them, but again,
they are cool fish,
they do have an attitude issue, shall we say?
Out of all African cichlids, they've actually got memes and stuff on the internet of them. Of people saying that's a nice fish. Be a shame if someone was to kill it. They're just like that. Even the fry, I used to breed them. And the fry, if I kept any other fry with them, the fry would go and kill them. Even if the other fry were twice the size, they would just go and murder them. So again, if you've got a tank full of really robust and big Mumbuna, you're probably going to be okay with Aratus. And it has to be a big tank and well laid out and stuff, because one male Aratus will probably just take over the whole tank. But like them in Kenya and stuff like that, you can probably get away with. But again, for the average person, Yeah, and again, this is where people will Google them and they'll find 2 or 3 people that say, yeah, no, they're okay, and they've kept them at like 2 centimeters long or something with some like 20 centimeter fish, and they haven't killed them, so they're fine, And then as soon as they mature, even a female, the fascinating thing about them is a female will actually color up like a male if there's no males in the tank. So you can get a dominant female that will act like a male even if you've got a female. So you're stuffed either way.
It's the worst of both worlds.
yeah.
But no, there were one I was contemplating putting on my list, but I thought they might be a bit too niche. But
they are pretty niche.
I am glad we've talked about them.
Yeah, they are niche, but they are readily available in the big box shops.
I didn't know that. I'm not going to lie.
They're very common fish. They're a common fish. Yeah.
For sure.
One of my customers sent me a photo the other day. Can I keep this golden Malawi, which is what they're known as in the shops? Can I keep this fish with my keyholes and gouramis and whatnot? And I just said straight up, nah, you're gonna basically in for a world of hate. And I'm glad he listened to me because he would be in trouble. But they're readily available. And that they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure. Sweet. Well, is it? Oh, it'll be my turn then, now, wouldn't it? Hold on. Let me just remember what my last one was. Oh yeah. So this is one that I have found people have a lot of issues with, and I suppose it's in the similar vein of what we're talking about is Livingstone eye. Not a good option for kind of 99% of people, just because they get big and they eat everything basically, and that's not going to be fun. So yeah, I mean it's kind of just as simple as that basically. Like it's not this one. I don't really have that much to talk about. It's just like no matter what you'll do, they'll probably eat half your fish. So that sucks.
And if you Google Nimbochromis, which is their family name, they're ambush predators. The reason they've got those spots on them is because they bury themselves and then jump out and eat other fish, and their diet is mambuna. And their natural diet is eating adult mambuna, so like you stick. And I've found, even though they're Nimbochromis, I found the Venustus to be quite good and not like that. But you've got the polystigs, you've got the Livingstone, you've got the Fuscos, that sort of thing, and they're cool fish. They're real cool fish. But again, I don't keep them for that reason because I stick, 5-6 centimeter fish in my display tank and let them color up. If I did that and I had an adult Livingstone or polystig or Fusco in there, he'd just eat them all. They just smash everything. They're probably not overly aggressive in terms of aggression levels for African cichlids in the right environment, but
they're just doing what they do.
They're just their natural environment. And on that note, if anyone would like some Livingstone, I've acquired some in the trade, and they're great fish and suitable for your 2-foot tank with your neons. So if you want some, let me know. I've got about 10 or 12 thanks to Wind, so
Oh, nice. But yeah, I mean they're not my thing, but they're cool enough. But they're one people always seem to be having problems with, and because the other problem with them is they're relatively easy to get. Like, they're pretty common. And you chuck one in your mixed African tank, and you'll have one fish in 5 minutes. So yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
A lot of my friends have had success with them, but their tanks, they can't put anything in that's less than like 10 centimeters. So they have to they have to have a separate grow out tank because they know if they stick anything smaller than that in, the Fusco or the Livingstone will eat them.
Yeah, and I mean if that's what you want to do, go ahead. But
it does limit your options.
I'd say,
it limits your options.
Yeah, it does kind of. It's not the most fun option, I'd say. So yeah.
There's better options of similar fish with the giraffes in my mind as well. Giraffes are great.
Yeah. Giraffes are the same family and should be the same thing, but I haven't found them anywhere near as predatory.
They're not. Yeah.
Still an adult giraffe will eat I've seen them eat fully grown algae eaters and stuff like that. Slender fish, if they can get it, they will. But well fed, and they eat, as we all know, they eat well. Giraffe will always be the fattest fish in any tank, but generally they're pretty good. I that's why I keep them, and I don't keep at the moment I'm keeping Livingstone, but they've got to go somewhere.
By accident.
Yeah. But I don't keep. I've looked at the polystigs before when they were around. I've looked at Livingstone and Fisco, but they're just too big and eat too much stuff for me.
For sure. Yep. Well, did you have any more options around?
Nah, that's pretty much me. I just thought I'd throw those ones in and talk about your guys' ones.
Fair enough. You got any more on your list, Cam?
I've got plenty, but I'm well aware that we're beginning to get time restraints for everyone having to go to work and whatnot.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
We don't want this to go on for too long.
Yeah.
We can always revisit it if we need to.
Yeah, save it for next time, eh?
Easy as.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much for listening. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments or on Facebook or anything like that. Please let us know if we've missed anything super obvious that you think we should have talked about. Let us know and we can address it next time. And remember to like and subscribe and all that stuff. It always helps. If there's any other topics as well you guys would like to hear about, definitely DM myself or Cam or leave them in the comments and I'll put them on the list. And thank you guys very much and we'll catch you later.
See you.
See you later.